Good evening and welcome to the November 20th, 2024 Economic Development and Planning Committee meeting. Time is 6:17. We'll go ahead and get started. Seeing no public participation, we have the approval of the minutes, but those came out pretty late today, so I'd like to hold off.
I had a chance to glance at it, but I didn't get the chance to look at them as I usually do, so.
So
What was that meeting date? That was the 16th?
yeah, this says September 9th.
Yeah, there's an error.
Yeah.
I didn't
Yeah, there was
update
an
that,
error, so we'll get all that corrected. We'll send those out, and then we'll.
That's fine, yeah.
Next.
Yeah, I didn't have a chance to look through them, so that's fine.
Okay. Okay, with that, we'll go ahead and move into economic development updates, and Tom?
Sure, thank you. Start with the annexation updates. I'd like to know kind of where we've been, where we're going, what's kind of the timetable. So I put that in front of you. That is the sheet that comes out from the clerk of courts, the state clerks kind of set forth the flow chart for how an annexation proceeds. I put a little circle on where we are. You just yesterday passed the resolution of services. We're not at the finish line yet, but that's the way you start the race. So we got the resolution of services done. Now it goes back up to the county board of the Board of County Commissioners, and they have to do things. They'll have to vote on it. Eventually, it'll come back to us. It'll go back to Julie, and she will lay it in front of council. Those are the terms in the statute, and then the time will start. We can't do it before 60, but not later than 120 days to actually vote on the annexation. One of the things we talked about on how we're doing it a little bit differently now, hopefully, is looking at whether or not pre-annexation agreements can be made. I put the working copy of a pre-annexation agreement kind of after there, so you get a chance to look at it. We don't have to talk about it today, but that's the type of things that's going to be try to lock down people, not only for their the zoning, what the zoning is going to look like. It's going to lock down what their site plan is going to look like, so we're not going to have a bait and switch. And they're going to lock down the procedure that we're going to be following to get this to the finish line. That'll take a look at that, and certainly I'll supplement the rest of council so that they can have a chance to look at it too. So what you're looking at is the pre-annexation agreement and the PUD, the planned unit development. That's the zoning, essentially. Mr. Kaiser is working on that, so that is also a draft. So that at the same time, these are all things that in this 120 days before we get to the end, to the finish line from the front of my story, we're going to be talking about this. We're going to be approving it at every level, and hopefully, fingers crossed, by the time we get to the finish line, we're going to be able to vote on a whole bunch of stuff at the same time. One, whether or not we're letting this property into the city or not. That'll be a question. Two, whether what we're rezoning it, assuming that they are coming in. And three, any TIF or any financial things that have to occur at the same time. So one council, knock down all those things, takes away all the mystery, so that we all know exactly what we're getting right from the front. From our perspective, that's good. From their perspective, that's great. So that's what we're looking to do. Traditionally, the way we would do it is we wait, and we're not going to talk about zoning until after it comes in. That leads to a lot of things that can go wrong along the way. But just as a hypothetical, though, what happens if we take in property that we decide not to zone? Say it's a farm for existence. If we were to take it in and not zone it, or have a pre-annexation agreement which agrees to zone it as something else, it would come in as residential in the township. It would not change zoning. It would be the identical zone that it was in before it was annexed. Township, for obvious reasons, I just bring this up just to, if there's any questions about the annexation process, how that would affect property, I'm certainly willing to talk to you about that. But it would come in either through agreement or through inaction at the zone for the township level. And something I did know that was brought up in one of the speakers we had is the enforcement would remain with the township. It would not come to us. So it would be no different than if it was not annexed.
The other thing to keep in mind is, if you recall when Wendy Mueller was here back over the winter talking about annexation and zoning, she'd mentioned what Tom said. You bring it in. You can leave it with its existing township zoning. You can give it any of the city's existing zoning classifications. The third option is you can create a new zoning district for that particular property. And to a certain extent, that's sort of what we're doing here with Vance, the Vance annexation, but I can talk about that a little bit later.
So along the way between we are here and finish line, nothing's going to happen without your authority given to me, whether it be executing the pre-annexation agreement. I'll be in front of you asking to do that. And for ultimately for some of the rezoning, whether it be this project or the adjacent parcel that's already in the city, that's going to come in front of you. That will also be public hearings involved there. So there's going to be a lot to talk about, but I wanted you to have that right in front so there was no surprises.
And so at any point here between your two stars, we can go ahead and work on the pre-annexation agreement. We don't have to wait for certain bubble levels to be reached here, right? We can go with this from right now on.
We've already started that, so we
Good,
can
okay.
do this prior to this for future, when we
Right.
do an annexation. We want to get these as soon as we can.
Good, okay.
So that we have these in front of you.
So as far as you, and I appreciate you sending this out to the rest of council, what would be the plan to make sure that we're not only discussing this in this committee, but we're making sure that everyone, it's such a big deal that, you know, do we put a placeholder on committee of the whole so we can carve out a few minutes to make sure, how do you plan to get all the feedback from all of council so that we're all hearing it and not just specific emails back to you?
At every stage, there's going to be legislation to authorization to enter into this contract. That's going to come up and it'll be in committee of the whole. I'll be here for that every time and answer any questions about that at committee of the whole. Anytime there's more questions that need to be popped up, I'm trying to supplement by giving them the written copy. Most of them are either here or kind of review this. Any questions I can do it at any given time, but I'm flexible on how you wanted to do it. But the perspective I had is I can get that done throughout the different levels of legislation as it comes forward.
Okay.
Okay. All right, yeah, sounds good, thank you.
Any questions?
No, thank you, Tom.
You bet.
Okay, we'll go ahead and move into CRA.
Most of you know, so I'll spare you, it's late, what exactly the CRA program is. It is just a direct incentive property tax exemption program. We have CRA areas throughout the town. So when somebody wants to invest, make significant capital investment, we're going to say we're going to lower, as an incentive for that, we're going to lower your property tax for a period of time. If it is more than 50% in past laws, we had to go get the permission of the school. We had to create some type of compensation agreement with the city schools. The legislation in Ohio has changed that, and they've moved that number to 75%. That doesn't mean we can't have some type of an agreement, but now we don't have to ask if it's under 75%. The legislation that we have on our books on how our system works reflects the 50% number. I'll be updating that to have the 75% number.
But the legislation will just, so we would make the determination whether or not we still want to continue status quo with asking the schools.
You always can do that. They get notice of every one of these CRAs, and if we wanted to on 25%, we could. We don't have to, though.
So even with the legislation, when we change it to 75%, on a certain occasion, we can still say, hey, we want to go to the schools and get their okay on this, or if
Yeah.
it's somewhere in between the fifth, okay.
If we want to.
Okay.
But we don't have to at that point.
All right.
Okay.
So what I'm asking is there's legislation that's been prepared. I'd like to send that up to the council for the whole to take a look at.
I'll make that motion to go ahead and move that up to the council of the whole for the CRA percentage increase.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we'll go ahead and move into a CIC presentation.
Okay. We've talked about it quite a bit, but I just wanted to put something formally in front of you to see, you know, I'm asking you for money. I better tell you what I'm going to do with the thing if we're going to actually go forward with this. Because we've had it on the books since 1970-something. It's been various forms of underfunded, non-funded, ignored, and if we're going to do it, we should do it. If we're not, then we probably should just abandon it, but I think it's well worth keeping around. So what I wanted to do is go over kind of what it is first, and then talk about what it can do and what I see it doing. What is it? It's a quasi-governmental nonprofit corporation organized for the purpose of advancing, encouraging, promoting industrial, economic, commercial, and civic development of the community. It's a 501c3. That's a classification, so if people were trying to donate to us, periodically we get people trying to donate us money in their will or what have you, this is a way where we can accept it and it would be a tax-exempt event, or you could do a tax deduction on it. There are two kinds of them. There's the traditional CIC, that's what we have. That's what Medina has, that's what Brunswick has. Cities have traditional CICs. There's also the County Land Revitalization Corporation. You'll see that coming up. That's a county program. That is the land bank that has recently come through. People ask the difference between the two, and what a land bank does is it just takes blighted property and it's a mechanism to clean the title so that they can take it and move it other places so that it doesn't become blighted area anymore. So traditional CIC does a lot more than that, but certainly can deal with blighted property. It is a corporation. What's a corporation? It's a separate legal entity. It has bylaws. It has codes of regulation. It has board of directors and officers. I can set however many I want, but there is a specific provision that says if we're going to use the designated agency function, and we'll talk about what that is, then at least 40% of the board must be elected or appointed by an official of a political subdivision which established the CIC. So we're going to have at least 40% of the board to be with the city in some capacity. What can it do? It can do a lot of different stuff, and let's kind of break it down. Number one is that it can acquire and sell property, real personal stock, partnership, etc. It's pretty broad. What I've found in the first year of doing this is there's been times when land has become available, and those are sticky times when you're a city because that may not be for very long, and cities do a lot of good things and a lot of things right. One of the things they are not known for is speed. So if I were to want to buy one of these parcels, traditionally I would come to council. We would go into executive session. We would talk about it. I would get the okay. Then I would go back, negotiate that contract, and then come back for an appropriation. Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. In that time, people don't want to deal with us because it's so slow. They don't want to have contingencies, which include approval of council. Sometimes that makes it too slow, too cumbersome for people to deal with. CIC doesn't have to do that. If a CIC notices property like that's the parcel over by Home Depot, which is now incorporated in our long-term plan for a traffic problem. That's that new bar, which was blighted and horrible and would just sit there forever unless we did something about it. Now it's going to be part of a nice plot of land that the city owns for parking and for other areas. So what a CIC can do is be that quick trigger. I see something, I go, I buy something. There is some, still has some control, but that's one thing CIC does. It can borrow money for economic development projects. It can have a stable full of titled property, and it can borrow against it. It can lend money. It can have a revolving loan fund, which we can do this. A lot of these CICs in these bigger corporate companies or these bigger cities, they have full-time staff, and they have multiple people working for them because they've got a load of property that they're dealing with. We're not suggesting that we're going to be expansing like that, but we'd like to have these ability to have these in our quiver if we need them. We can serve as administering agents for grant applications. This kind of cuts both ways. One, we do have grants that we have, and I asked for money for a grant for a city-wide facade improvement. We've had the restaurant improvement grant, we've had the facade improvement grant. We could have the CIC be the agency that decides what are the characteristics we're looking at, what's the matrix we want to give money. We could have the CIC administer the grants and say this is what we want, this is what we don't want, and we're going to judge, we're going to give money to this person or that person. It can administer the grants, but it also could file for grants for the city. There's a lot of money out there if you know where it is. So we're looking, and one of the groups that can make that application is the CIC on behalf of the city. So that would be helpful. You can sell leased property owned by a political subdivision as its agent without having to comply with public sale requirements. The price may be below fair market value, and the buyer may be in a target industry. That's a big one, because I can act as a CIC, as an agent for the city for the promotion of economic development. And maybe it's not to the highest bidder. Maybe we want to direct this property because if it's an economic policy or for a plan, one place or another. It can be faster, it can be easier, and it can be targeted for economic development. There is still council control, and I always wanted to say that. Anytime the CIC would act as the agent, the council has to approve the agency for that maneuver. So we don't need the speed in buying project, but certainly we want the control when we're selling projects or we're targeting for economic development. So it's not going to be in one person's hand. So that's one thing, acting as an agent. You can think of a lot of different places or a lot of different times when that would be helpful to avoid ridiculous situations. So some of the things we're looking at, if we do get some funding this year, there's already a little bit of money in the pot right now from some donations that were made, is to be on lookout for strategic plots of land. We always do that. Do projects that advance economic development, which the city cannot do. One of the things that we talk about is we can't, as a city, invest in someone's private property. Someone has something that's a real eyesore, they don't have the money to get rid of it, but it's on their property. We can't do anything about it as a city, because that would be investing in private property. It's unconstitutional. The CIC can do that. Think of the marathon, that eyesore that they have over there. The CIC can walk in and say, we're going to give a grant for that, for removal. City can't do that. We want to set parameters for grants and administer grants. We have some money for grants that we're talking about, and act as an agent for the economic development. We've used this in the past, 70 years ago, or in the 70s, for the airport as a methodology for moving hangars around, where you're not having bidding on it. It can be used for that type of maneuvers too. So when you come to the law department and say, can I do that? Often they'll say, city can't. CIC can. That's the type of flexibility we're looking for. Current membership is Robert Patrick, Robin Labaugh, me, Lisa Jones, Mike Testa, I'm not sure, Bill Lyron Sr., Adrian Patrick, and Norman Bragg. That is probably not the way I would structure it right now. Some of these people, Robert doesn't work for the city anymore. Bill Lyron was a city person. Adrian was Main Street. Norman is longtime city employee as well. I think it needs to have everybody buying in to this. So you need people from different parts, not just parts of the city. So I would suggest the membership, the service director should always be the president, whoever the service director is. The mayor should always be vice president, no matter who that person is. A president of city council or someone that the president assigns on council, hopefully it would be someone from economic development, or himself, since he's always on it. Whoever that may be should be on there as well. The city auditor or treasurer or rep assigned, and then a resident from banking, a resident from business, a resident from law and accounting. And I've talked to people that are willing to serve, who have actual ideas as to what they want to do and how they want to do it. So that would be the proposed membership that we'll do on the first meeting, which would be in January, hopefully. Long-term goals is we've got to establish funding for this long-term, so are we just going to be a creature of the general fund? Are we going to redirect hotel bed taxes? Are we taking a new source? That really depends on how much you need, depends on what you want to do. So what I would do is take that committee in and see what type of appetite do you have for it. Do you want to swing big? Then we need money. If you want to work around the edges, then you won't need as much, and perhaps we can just have an annual grant. So that's the CIC just in general, and I raced through that really quick. So I'm certainly willing to answer questions you have now, or we can talk about it at a later time, whatever you want.
No, I appreciate it. I mean, there's a lot of detail there that I've heard bits and pieces of that, but to see it all together like that explains a lot. And if you could share that with us in council, I think it would be, that way we can always refer to it. Yeah, that's a very complete explanation of what we can do with it.
Yeah, definitely. That was a really good presentation. Yeah, I think sharing it with everyone's a great move. Out of curiosity, how much is currently in the pot?
I think it's about $50,000.
How long would the terms be, like, for the membership?
Current bylaws say it's for 1 year, but if you forget, then it can continues on. So
Okay.
put everybody on for 1 year. It starts, you should meet every year. I see this thing meeting quarterly, at least, depending on if you want to start doing some bigger things. If you want to start fooling around with infrastructure and how we do certain things, then we're going to need to meet more.
Okay, interesting. Any questions?
No, no, we're good, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. Okay, any general updates? Tom, do you have anything else?
We did the economic development at a glance. You should have all gotten that. If you have any questions, certainly willing to look at that. But in general, there has been interest in some downtown projects too. I'd like to tell you when those are, but they're just not ready for prime time. I am meeting with somebody on the dress shop for a new business that moved down. I am meeting somebody for the tea shop who wants to come in as well. So hopefully we can get those things filled as well. And when they're ready to tell their story, I'll certainly share that information.
The job creation grants here that are down is pending for Celebrate Vitamins and ECS Tuning. Just any idea of, I mean, they're pending.
Yeah, it was pending because it didn't start yet. The next year, they're going to have to justify the numbers that they had so that they can be granted
That would be
payroll tax
okay.
relief.
With the numbers that they'll show, then it'll go into effect once they show those numbers in 2025. Okay. Thank you.
Any interest on the east end of town for potential businesses?
I have interest, but where I'm seeing the calls come in from is not from the east end of town. So where I'm seeing it in the center of town, I'm seeing it in the north end, I'm seeing it in the south end. All those places, typically we see it, and I just haven't seen any buzz from that east side. I know you want a coffee shop, I'm working on
Yeah, something.
something.
Okay, thanks for that. Let's go ahead and move into building and planning updates.
Okay, first thing, project updates. Engineering department is working to create a spreadsheet that kind of tracks various projects. It's not quite ready for prime time yet, but it's divided in such a way, okay, have we had any pre-discussion meetings with folks? Anything that has gone to a preliminary discussion, anything that's on planning commission. We're going to try and get that set up so that it's on a website or a link and anyone can look at it any time. But just for right now, in the last probably month, we've had about 4 meetings with potential projects. I know Tom's met regarding a potential hotel. We've talked to folks about some possible residential developments over on the east side between Broad and Akron Road, east of Hartman. The Reimer Road subdivision, that was the 81 acres that was annexed last year. That I spoke to them recently, and I think they're getting ready to submit for a preliminary discussion review. We've also, in the past 2 weeks, had 2 discussion meetings. One of them was for a private storage facility out on Quadrill Drive. The other was a fairly major subdivision on Milkovich property.
Just so you know, Jeff, I put it in your packet.
Oh, okay, you got it.
They had this, but they don't have the preliminary stuff. It was just,
Okay.
this is post
Okay.
planning commission, is what they have.
Anyhow, what you may have that differs from mine is again, it just goes through different phases. Right now, the planning commission activity is nothing. That agenda is clear. I know a few items are coming up for review in December. And then the rest have actually moved on to civil plan review, so they're in various stages of completion. But see what Tom has sent to you here. Yeah, so we've got, again, Salvation Army, Pal Gym, MPI labels, contractor, those have all been through Planning Commission. They're just pending the next step. But again, I think in the future, to have that handy, you can at least track projects and see where they are.
Give you a quick update on the Salvation Army project. It's been ongoing. Drawings were all received today. They're going to go to the county. And with the timeline, if everything falls into place, of course, Mother Nature has to cooperate, but on paper, there's a possibility of putting that shovel in the ground in February. is kind of what we're looking like right now. We've got all the drawings came in today, and again, going to the county is the next step there. So that's a little closer than it has been in the last 6 years. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's getting close. So
One of the things I'll point out too on this, and I let Glenn talk to it more, is one of the things you see is when we get things and when we return things. So that you know that there's accountability at the engineering level, that these things aren't just sitting in a pile somewhere, that they're actively getting turnaround time. And I'm looking at turnaround time of a week, which is very reasonable in my opinion. So that shines light on the situation to make sure that everybody's accountable to it. Is there anything else on this, Glenn, that you want to bring up?
Just the inspiration for this was we just get a lot of questions about what's happening.
Right.
And so it's just transparency. So this was not hard to do. It helps us to track things a little bit better. So if there's anything else that you are looking to have us provide for you, feel free just to let us know, because this is really coming from a lot of questions that if you're really interested in the details, we're happy to share them. So that's really all this kind of what got us to think, let's just help you out, and then we can make this available to the public. There's no mystery. These are all public records, all public applications, and happy to provide whatever information you need.
When do you think it'll be ready for prime time?
Actually, a lot of the changes have been made.
My vision is that first, we'll just give it to you guys
Yeah.
every time. So you have it, and then we'll
Okay.
make that decision maybe after the first of the year or what have you, as to what needs to be published out to the public. The real concern is some of these aren't our stories to tell. And I feel very wary of that, where I'm telling somebody who may have had a grand opening plan or an announcement plan before then. So I try not to. These are all the ones that have gone to planning commission, so certainly I feel more comfortable getting that out.
I think once we've had the preliminary discussion, then it's public record, because we've got plans that they're on file.
And we do have some other changes. We're looking for the website to update some information to help walk people through the process that we're working on as well. So that we'll probably have a whole package ready in the beginning of next year, most likely.
I did have a question about the Grandview area. Weren't there some businesses going in down there?
Grandview, there was a contractor storage,
that's-
multiple buildings, and
Yeah.
yeah, that's been through the planning commission, that's been approved. I believe that is, that's one of the items that's kind of still in that, they've been through planning commission, but have not yet submitted for civil plan review.
Okay. How many, were there 5?
Total of 5, I believe.
Yeah.
The 3 is the first phase.
It was a two-phase project, 3 buildings that can be customized to width. But yeah, it was a two-phase project. I think they were going to do 3 buildings off the bat, and then the other 2 in the
Right.
future.
Okay. And we can't say what they are yet, or?
Well, you can, I guess what they call them, I'm not sure if they actually have a name. I think they've got a posted coming soon sign down there.
Okay.
But they're billing it as contractor storage, so if you're a handyman or contractor, need a
You
place
can
to
use
store
that.
your
Okay.
truck, they rent spaces to
Okay.
store your truck and your materials and whatnot.
Okay. Any other questions?
Are we on the other yet?
No,
Okay, I'll wait that next question.
not yet. Okay, supplemental appropriation?
Yes, I think I did see that on the agenda, council agenda for $5,800. We're going to need that, I think, to cover expenses to Medina County until the building department function is transferred over to them. And I don't know, Matt, were you going to speak as to when that may or may not happen, or?
I could give an update if you'd
Okay.
like. Tomorrow, County Administrator Springer's coming to meet with me. He and I have both signed off on the document at this point in time. There are some things that we want to discuss before it becomes formalized, and that's what tomorrow's discussion is.
So this appropriation, which will be on third reading, would hopefully cover us through the end of 2024.
Okay. Okay, We'll go ahead and move on to discussion items, starting with zoning for areas surrounding downtown.
Tom's going to pass out a map for you, but there's 3 items I wanted to just discuss and get your feedback on. First is potential zoning for the areas surrounding downtown. Handed out a map, I've color-coded some of those areas on the northeast and west side of downtown that are pretty much zoned C1 and C3. I think the time's come that we need to consider new zoning for those areas, something that's more of a mixed use in nature or form-based, because currently what we've got there isn't working. None of the lots meet any of the C1 or C3 district requirements. So that's a problem. Number 2, in terms of lot areas and lot sizes. Number 2, that area around downtown originally developed as residential neighborhoods that have sort of converted over the way. There's still quite a few number of homes, in these areas that are zoned for commercial uses. So they're non-conforming. And they're limited on what they can do based on certain zoning requirements. I think the reason these areas were zoned for commercial uses is it's a natural way for downtown to expand. And I think we still need to keep that in mind. But on the other hand, I think it's clear that there is nothing wrong with mixing of residential uses and certain commercial uses, the restaurants, shops, coffee shops, etc. So what I am suggesting is, if you're amenable, we'll start working on crafting new zoning regulations for these areas that would allow for mixed uses. So that, again, we've had an issue where there was a property originally built in 1927 as a house, used for the last 25, 30 years as a commercial district. Someone tried to sell it as a house and couldn't do it because the underlying zoning doesn't allow you to go back. It doesn't matter that 70 years ago it was built as a home. Current regulations state, this is what it is, and you can't allow non-conforming uses. So again, just looking through the area, just a quick drive-by, there's a fair number of homes there that can still continue, or they can be divided into apartments, or like the Erie Insurance, I think they've got potentially an apartment or something upstairs and an office. So I think it's time to come up with something that's going to work, something that's going to account for the actual lot sizes and not require 30 or 40,000 square feet, which is not going to be possible or practical in downtown. But before I started down that path, I wanted to make sure that this committee thinks, yeah, it's the right thing to do, and we'll start working on crafting something.
I do.
I think that's
Absolutely, because, it's, especially, with some of the studies, we've done a couple on the downtown area, which showed, the different uses that people wanted, whether it was apartments or living and things like that. And not if, but when all that happens downtown, the zoning is going to need to change to accommodate that, to help that succeed. So I agree.
Yeah, so we may as well start it now, and it can simultaneously, one, take care of the non-conforming use issue that applies to pretty much all of the existing residential homes down there, and 2, allows homes that were converted to businesses to convert back to residential, and vice versa. Someone can take their home and convert it to a business use if it meets, the certain, the requirements.
Yep, be interesting to see. Yep.
All right, so if you're okay with that, then we'll start down that path.
Rough timeline. It's a big project, rough timeline, because there's going to be different, there's going to be a little bit of different, a lot of analyzing here. Ballpark timeline?
I'm hoping to have something back in, by January.
Okay.
Rough idea in January.
Okay, good, thank you.
These aren't very big.
They're very small lots, so I
Yeah,
think,
right.
that's what we need to do, is
Yeah.
we need to account for what's likely to, and we're really
Right.
looking not so much at new development or new
No.
growth, but how can we take what's there and reuse it?
Yeah.
Because, and the other problem with the current zoning is, and I don't think we want to see this, someone could come in and buy a block of these properties that are zone C3 and create a larger development that's really not appropriate for downtown.
Right.
So there's a lot of different things to think about, but I think we can come up with something that's going to work with the existing built environment and allow kind of really the only issues you'd have to deal with are building code requirements. And that's nothing we can really do anything about.
Okay, thank you. Okay, updates to PUD regulations?
Yeah, the second item, in the draft development agreement for Vance that Tom gave you, included in there was, I think we called it Exhibit C. It was a potential Hartman Road planned unit development zoning district. Okay, using this, two things. One, this would become the zoning for the Vance property. And again, it's still a work in process. But as I've mentioned to you many times in the past, our existing PUD regulations aren't true planned unit developments. They're more of an overlay. A PUD regulation, and I would use this template to craft it, really changes the underlying zoning district. So a property that is, say, currently zoned R1 residential, if someone came to us and said, I've got a master plan development, a planned unit development for X number of units on 80 acres, this is the form it should take. It's basically kind of a negotiated zoning. And what we do or trying to do for Vance is what I would like to see the existing planned unit development regulations become. It would follow this template. The uses for each PUD might differ. The lot sizes may differ. But I think this is the formula that it should follow so that, for instance, Vance, the property comes in as an R1 township. Well, instead of zoning it R1 city, R2 city, it would become the Vance planned unit development. That's the way it really should have worked all these years, and it really hasn't. And I think this is actually, once we've kind of worked through the first one or two, I think we can come up with a template that's going to be feasible for other projects in the future. So again, just looking, if you think that that's a good thing to do, we'll continue working, going down that road. But I think this is pretty much what we need to do for Vance, and I think it would become the blueprint for what we do in the future.
So this is basically a concept plan, right?
This is a concept zoning.
Yeah,
This is a
when we
concept.
talk about asking for a concept plan, this is what we,
Yeah, they gave
now,
us.
would we
they would-
establish this after it's,
No,
At the
if-
same time.
if-
right? When you
At the
have
same
that-
time,
When you have
okay.
a pre-annexation agreement, they've sent us the
Yeah.
concept plan right from the start.
Right.
You gotta know if this is gonna be.
but this is like,
And then we're gonna say, we're gonna negotiate
Yeah.
what the terms are so that we know what we're getting,
Right.
you know what we're getting.
Right.
That would be what the planned unit development, so the planned unit development in its base is a contractual negotiation between us and the development, so we all agree what the zoning's gonna be
Yeah.
right from the start. We publish that on, and you file that at the recorder's office, so everybody knows what it is. And then everybody's going to be bound by that in the future unless it's changed.
And then we change our zoning map to identify
Yeah,
this
this
as
as a PUD.
Vance PUD, or whatever we want
and
to
it'd
call it.
be a one-off.
Yeah. Currently, we have, it's really weird how they do it. They have a PUD regulation. It's just kind of its own little zone part. So they have it's zoned R1 with a PUD on top of it.
Oh.
And it doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make
how they do
sense.
it.
Okay.
So when I think that we're getting that new zoning thing as part of the process of what they're creating for us, we're going to spell out the process. Hey,
Yeah.
look, if you want to go in R1, R2, R3, or let's figure out what we want to do exactly. We'll document it, we'll negotiate, we'll make sure it's done properly, make sure you have a chance to look at it so that you know what's coming in, and then we can go from there.
And I would think that, the guardrails for that are the general zoning.
Yeah.
The guardrail, right, are the general plan.
Right,
So
the
what we
general
would
plan,
do, the proposed draft is 4 pages long, and the fourth page basically kind of spells out the review process. But basically, it goes to Planning Commission first. They look at the general plan. What does the comprehensive plan say? What's your density?
Right.
And what does the comp plan suggest is appropriate for this area?
Yeah, those are the
And so they would go through, what uses do you want? And do those make sense? And because the PUD would become the underlying zoning, there will be a public hearing at the Planning Commission. And then once they've given their blessing, it then comes to council. Because again, you will have to adopt and say, yeah, okay, we're going to take this property and change it from R1 Township or R1 City, whatever it might be, to fill in the blank PUD.
Yep.
And that way, everyone's all on the same page, and any future purchaser of the property knows what they can and can't build and how it's going to be laid out. Because, this is the text, but the general concept plan is kind of the backup document to it. And so what gets built needs to substantially comply. And obviously, we know that in the real world, things happen out in the field, you might have to adjust boundaries slightly, but it's, they're going to comply. This kind of makes sure that they are going to develop the way they intended as part of the initial annexation.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
Okay.
Okay, and
Onward and
then
upward.
number C, public storage land uses.
Yeah, the last item I just wanted to touch base with you about is public storage uses. It's probably one of the hotter items, and a lot of the projects have involved those people. The rental storage places. They do consume a lot of land. Right now, we do allow them in C3 and industrial districts. What economic development do they provide to the community? Probably not a whole lot. Most of them have 1 or 2 employees tops. The one we just had a discussion meeting with, no employees. It's kind of key entry. You can enter 24/7, you get a pass, you unlock. So the big question is this, do we want to continue allowing these according to our current regulations, or should we take a look at how other communities do things? Are we allowing these in the right district? Do we have the right, do we have the proper safeguards in them? Because let's face it, they're not the most attractive land uses. So my question to you is this, if you would be interested in supporting a maybe 6-month moratorium, we can look at how other communities treat these uses and come back to you and say that, hey, we suggest we make these changes to our code, or you know what, it's kind of a free-for-all out there, just let it go. But it is rather consumptive of what little land we still have left in the city, and they really don't provide a lot of employees or a lot of economic benefit. So I'm throwing that out there as something to think about. If so, those projects that are in the pipeline, we'll let those finish out, but it would buy us a little bit of time to look into how other communities treat these and where they allow them and under what conditions.
I'd be in favor of that again, because of the land use and everything else, again, it's not high on the food chain, so to speak, and I think that...
At least look at it.
Yeah, at least take a look at it and see where we're at on it. I agree with that, I'd be fine.
Yeah,
with it.
I mean, whether everyone had an appetite to put a moratorium on them for 60 days or not, I would still welcome the research to figure out if we are doing it correctly, and maybe we're finishing, we're continuing to do what we do, but we're looking at that. So.
Should I have the law director kind of prepare an ordinance? This in the certain.
I mean, I would just want to be dead certain that it didn't affect anyone that's currently in the pipeline.
Right.
No, we would word it in such a way
Just
that,
anything in the future.
basically as of a certain date. But
Right.
we've already gotten through a preliminary discussion with one, and believe me, took us about 8 to 10 months to get there. We met with them originally in April, and they kept coming back with all the wrong information because they just picked a bad site. At the time, the site was pretty much 50% detention basin. They didn't want to hire an engineer, and it's like, we can't approve this, and we can't go to Planning Commission and allow you to approve something where you might have to come back and re-engineer and regrade the whole site. So they finally got someone on board, showed how they could regrade the site to free up land to put these things on. So yeah, I consider them in the pipeline, so they're about ready to submit, I would think, in the next 60 days. perhaps, a moratorium beginning January 1st, running through June 30th to give us that time. And if we finish early, we can lift it. It's really not a whole lot different than what we did with the medical marijuana
Right.
uses. We had a 1-year moratorium on there that we continued for like 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
I mean, I would support that. If you need a
would
motion here to do that or prepare it and then go,
Yeah, we can have, I can have Mr. Proudfoot kind of prepare some language in an
Okay.
ordinance form and get it to the next committee of the whole.
no, I'll go ahead and make that motion and move that forward for a 6-month moratorium on the public storage units for us to give some investigative time.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We'll go ahead and move into other business, and I'll let you
Yes,
take
I
it.
wanted to follow up, the property on the High Street that I've talked about before, the old Atomic Bar and the.
Oh, yeah, we sent a
What's
letter.
happening with that, and then also the house on, the residential house on Seville, south of the, or, yes,
Okay.
south and
Talk to
west.
the owner of the Seville property. In fact, I've got to contact the fire chief. But he had been talking with the fire chief for several months about using that as a control burn. So
Good.
I don't know where that stands. As for the Atomic Bar, well, we did get a letter out, certified letter. It came back unsigned. So I think Tom knows how to track the owner down. We're going to resend that letter. Initially, though, I got the wrong building. There was also a building behind the Atomic Bar that was in pretty derelict shape. So I sent them a letter, and the building itself doesn't look too bad, but it's missing the roof. And I got a call back from him that says, I'm going to be demolishing this within the next 6 months. So those things
Okay,
are going on.
thank you very much.
That's an odd one because it's kind of connected. If you know
Yes.
that half of it's still that Horner's Corner or that
Yes.
garage, and then the other half is the Atomic, different owners. So there's a firewall between them. There's, in the back of, behind the car dealership was the dilapidated house. And then we're dealing with the other parcel who owns a lot of other parcels there. And I think one of the owners was in some medical issues. So the service area changed on us.
So we'll figure out who gets the letter and resend it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay? Yep. Time to move into,
Can I jump in one thing on before we get to the budget? Just do one thing.
Unless the budget won't take long, but go ahead.
I just wanted to, I just found out this morning, we had the resolution for supporting America 250 in 2021. The governor set forth, created America 250 to help coordinate the celebration of 250-year anniversary of America. Our historical society wants to be involved in that, whether it gets notification for it or gets grant money or eligible grant money for it. In order to do that, we need a resolution from City Council that says we want to be part of that. I have Law Department preparing that right now. I would hope that I could just get that in front of you, get a quick resolution. Doesn't cost anything. It's for the Historical Society so they can make applications.
coming in, that was called Grant 250?
It is called America 250.
America 250.
So it's the bicentennial, it's the 250.
Okay.
It is for the
Pronounce that.
semi-quincentennial of America.
Otherwise known as the 250.
That's the one.
That's right.
So if I get a motion to put that resolution on in front of council, then I'll make sure that the law prepares
I'll
the
make
resolution.
that motion that we have a resolution to support America 250.
Second.
Absolutely, yes.
All in favor?
Okay.
Aye.
Aye.
Sure. Last item, and I didn't make you copies because I passed this out last week and I
Yeah.
forgot. It was, we went over the economic development budget. I don't know if you had any issues or concerns with the building and planning budget, which, with the transfer of the building department activities to the county, is going to be much reduced. Not only in revenues, but also in expenditures. What we paid to the county for their electrical inspection services was probably the biggest item. Other than that, nothing has really changed. We're not really a revenue generator per se. We're kind of a service department, and Again, revenues, we won't be getting any more building permit revenues. We will still continue to get applications for planning commission, zoning permits for all commercial and industrial uses. But at some point, I'm assuming beginning at the 1st of 2025, folks would come here, they would get their engineering plans approved for a single-family home, get their zoning approved, and then go up to the county, who would then handle all the permitting and inspections and plan reviews from there.
Okay. Any questions?
No. And I'd just like to thank too with some of the moving forward on whether it's, some of the PUDs, the zoning, and engineering. I know that many people are involved, but I do know that Glenn has taken the engineering department leaps and bounds forward, as far as dealings and everything else. And I know that because you're reporting at just about every committee level here, so I know everything you're doing is touching just about everything. So, and I go, there's many other people, service director, everybody involved with that, but I do appreciate all the direction that we're going with this. So thank you, everybody.
Okay. Anything else?
No.
Okay. I'll go ahead and entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
We are adjourned.
You are watching WCTV, Wadsworth Community Television.